Hello and welcome to Cocoon Yoga. My name is Selena, and today we're here to chat about the benefits of yoga during pregnancy. So we know birth is a huge challenge, both physically and mentally. Yoga helps to build those strong muscles necessary to support you through the later stages of pregnancy, for during your birth, and for the postpartum period. But why I love yoga during this time is because it incorporates that mindfulness and breathing into the practice. Two huge players that are essential for birthing mothers. So here are my top 3 reasons why I believe yoga complements pregnancy, birth, and the beyond. Number 1 is its connection to the breath. So when we actively connect to this deep, repetitive breathing, we activate what's called the parasympathetic nervous system, and that is our rest and digest state of being. And so when we do that, we bring this sense of calm and peacefulness inward. And as you can imagine, that's very helpful during the challenge of birth and during the postpartum period as well. Another huge reason why I think these two are so complementary is when practicing yoga, it helps you to follow your intuition, allowing that internal being within you to be your guide. When we can follow our intuition, follow that little voice inside that says what we need when we need it, it helps us to stay in that fight mode versus flight mode. And when we stay there during the birth, when we can tap into that hind brain, we allow the flow of oxytocin to be released from the brain. Yeah, and the oxytocin is a hormone necessary to contract your uterus. That's what gives you labor. So without that nice flow of oxytocin, contractions, they're not going to be happening. And we want contractions to be getting longer, stronger, and closer together during the stage of birth. And so help it by following your intuition, allowing yourself, your breath to guide you. And these are all practices done in prenatal yoga. So my third reason why I think these two are so complementary is the inward focus. And so meditation, whatever you want to call it, it's done at the beginning, even during, and at the end of each yoga class. And so what we do is bring our focus inside, carving out a little bit of space and clarity in front of us without that mummy chatter, monkey chatter brain always coming at us, telling us what we have to do, what we didn't do. Rather, giving us these little moments of time for clarity, to find peace. And when we do that, when we can tap into that openness, we train the brain to sit still. And what we want to do is practice that leading up to the birth, because distraction is inevitable. It will come into your birth space. And so you want to be able to notice the distraction and let it go. And that is the practice of meditation, and that is done all throughout yoga. So really helpful, these 3 factors of the breath, of following your intuition, and of mindfulness and meditation all help you tremendously for your birth and beyond. I get asked a lot about what poses to avoid during pregnancy when you're practicing yoga. And so I'm just going to back up a little bit and talk about something called diastasis recti, because this is a huge factor of why we don't do some poses in yoga. So diastasis recti is the weakening of the fascia that holds together your 6-pack wall. So fascia is like a spider web of interconnective tissue, and it sits right underneath your skin, and it holds together your muscles. So the muscles of your 6-pack. Now, when you have intra-abdominal pressure from inside the belly, like growing baby, growing uterus, amniotic fluid, organs, all of this stuff pushing from the inside, it can weaken the integrity of that fascia of your 6-pack wall. And so what we want to do is avoid exacerbating or making that worse, that weakening worse. So during your third stage, third trimester of pregnancy, every mama will experience some degree of diastasis recti, okay? It's inevitable. Your belly muscles can only go so far, and that's okay. But what we want to do is avoid certain poses or movements or shapes in the body that will exacerbate and make that worse. So I like to just tell mamas to turn off their six-pack when they're pregnant. We don't need strong six-packs when you're pregnant, but we do need a strong connection to your core, which sits way deep down, right above your pubic bone. So the area of your rectus abdominis, your six-pack area, we can just keep soft and open, rather focusing on connection with the core. So what kind of poses really put that intra-abdominal pressure there? Well, poses such as planks, like a high push-up pose. So this will put intra-abdominal pressure. Imagine baby, the weight of baby in my tummy being drawn towards the ground. And so when you do that, gravity is helping open this area up. And again, in those later stages of pregnancy, you can really put extreme intra-abdominal pressure on the area, and we want to avoid that. So any sort of planks are really avoided, even in the early stages of your pregnancy. I got diastasis recti in my first trimester with my first baby, so just being very mindful of that. Other kind of poses that you want to avoid are anything that resembles a sit-up or a crunchie. So in yoga, a boat pose, we want to avoid. We want to avoid anything like a crunchie, and we want to avoid getting down to do a reverse sit-up. So that could just be your everyday movements as well, getting into your bed. Try to avoid getting down by activating your six-pack. Rather, rolling onto your side and making your way down. Okay, and then the last one we want to avoid are any sort of back bends. So back bends are like camel pose, bow pose on your belly, anything that puts this extreme opening on the belly muscles, creating that intra-abdominal pressure. Rather than a back bend, I like to do heart lifts. So instead of camel pose, reaching for the heels, I will just put the hands on the lower belly and lift the heart up, keeping the six-pack area soft. So that is just a quick synopsis of the poses that we want to avoid. Other cues are if you're suffering from nausea, indigestion, heartburn, then dropping your head below your pelvis can worsen that. So rather just keep your head up above your heart, and this can help to minimize those sensations. Also, as you move into the second trimester, belly starts to become more bountiful, and what you can sometimes start to feel is this pain, like this achiness in your pubic bone, and it kind of feels like you got kicked in the crotch. This is called Symphysis pubis dysfunction, and it's very common if you were to lift up one leg and kind of feel this dull achiness here. What it is, it's actually a diastasis of the pubic bone as well, same as a diastasis in the tummy muscles. So it's just the pubic bone has shifted as the pelvis is growing. And so poses such as stork pose in yoga, even tree pose, can aggravate that. So rather, we would just adjust. We would keep the toe down on the floor for support, or if you were coming into sunbird and raised a leg up, rather, we would just keep that down, okay? So lots of modifications, lots of options to give. So the third major contraindication comes to play in the third trimester when you're 35 weeks and beyond, and you know baby is breech. If this is your case, we want to avoid doing deep squats like malasana. Rather, if you're 35 weeks and beyond and you know baby is breech, so not in that optimal position, just come into a half squat instead. Or you can use the prop of a chair or a wall as well to help you there. Coming into deep squats helps to encourage the pelvis to open up and make more space down there. Now, if baby's at 35, 36, 37 weeks and they're not head down, they're not in that optimal position for birth, they're breech, then you don't want to invite them down, encourage them down at that point. So this is why we would avoid squat. Thank you so much for joining me here today. If you have any questions or comments, please feel free to go to our website to get in touch. It is KukoonYoga.com.